This is an On the Ice and Behind the Benches podcast on the Sports for Beginners podcast feed.
I wonder if I could make it. It's almost getting to 8 o'clock p.m., and I am still a few more steps away from home to get to my computer to listen to CNT Radio's Cosmopolitan Culture Club. The best of the best music from around the world. Can't wait! I think I made it! CNT Radio, making your day brighter, one song at a time.
A night owl game Saturday, afternoon game on Sunday. Blue Jays, Athletics, lights up, let's go. It's the 3-game series wrap-up in double force right now on the Ice and Behind the Benches. Let's go.
Thank you so much for joining us on Sports for Beginners, the podcast, for Blue Jays game recap, the after show on Sports for Beginners, the podcast, right after every Blue Jays game. To learn more about upcoming episodes, when they drop, and schedule, please visit https://sportsforbeginners0.wordpress.com. Follow the show on Facebook at facebook.com/sportsforbeginners87. Send us an email at sportsforbeginners87@gmail.com. Follow Ali, Thomas, and Scott on Twitter at Scott McGregor 3, Thomas J, and ALI Musa. Follow Thomas and Scott on Instagram at SMC_87_ and TM_80 and TM00_. Thanks for listening to Blue Jays Baseball, and we hope to see you soon again. This has been Blue Jays Game Recap. Once again, the website is https://sportsforbeginners0.wordpress.com. Thanks for listening. And when it's time for the Blue Jays to play ball, there's only one chant Blue Jays fans will be using. Catch you later, baseball fans.
Blue Jays fans, athletic fans of Sacramento, and everywhere in between. Welcome to Blue Jays game recap on the ice and behind the benches. And of course, the final time on Sports for Beginners. The All-Star Weekend is in full swing. We will dive into the final pieces of that puzzle later in the show. Get you set for the Home Run Derby. And of course, the American League Future and National League Futures already got their game going ahead of game 2 between the Athletics and the Blue Jays. We'll dive into some thoughts before the show is up about that game. And we will make sure to get you ready for the main event of All-Star Weekend in Atlanta, the 95th annual All-Star Game between the American League All-Stars and the National League All-Stars. First pitch, of course, set to go at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. The rest of the times to be revealed later in the program. Blue Jays fans, the Athletics take it 2 out of 3 in this series against us, the Blue Jays, the Toronto Blue Jays. But it's not all bad. As you may recall, a little earlier in the season, the Athletics came to Toronto back in May for 4 games in which the Blue Jays, taking into June, took care of business, winning 12-0 on Thursday, the first game of that series. Then they took City Connect Friday night, 11-7. And then, of course, on Lou Gehrig Day, we played that game on Sunday, which was also known as a Junior Jays Sunday originally before the promotions. That game, Blue Jays take it. They sweep the series 8-4, and they take down Oakland or Sacramento, whatever you want to call them. That was not the case this series in Sacramento. First, a recap before we dive in to the games between the Athletic and the Blue Jays, up 2 that we have to get to in this double dose of Blue Jays game recap. If you missed it earlier or you heard it on Jays Talk or even on the Athletics radio network, the Blue Jays had 2 night games, which started on the Pacific at 7:05 p.m. Pacific, 10:05 p.m. Eastern Time start on both Friday and Saturday night. This afternoon's game that we'll get into after we're done with Saturday's game was scheduled to throw first pitch at 4:05 p.m. Eastern, 1:05 p.m. Pacific. We will dive into that matchup a little later. But if you don't remember what that score was as it pops up here between the two teams on our show notes, that final score was Blue Jays 7, Athletics 6. So the Blue Jays fight hard to win the first game of this 3-game series, going up 7 runs and exiting that game with 1 run. Yes, they only won by 1 run. But what about the games we're going to talk about today, this afternoon, or tonight, whenever you may be listening to this? Well, Blue Jays and Athletic fans, you'll be pleased to know that those games were also close games. One was a 3-run victory over the Blue Jays for the Athletics. Those of the Athletic fans that will enjoy that victory. Happy Victory Monday to you, Athletic fans. You take 2 out of 3 against the Blue Jays. We're going to dive into Sunday's game, the 6-3 victory, as I mentioned, after we're done with Saturday's game. And speaking of Saturday's game, let's dive in to matchup between the A's and the Blue Jays in game 2 of this series. That was quite a classic to behold. If you're an A's fan or a Blue Jays fan, you had mixed emotions about this game. Let's be real. The winning pitcher was Jacob Lopez. His record 3-5 on the season. Kevin Gausman goes from 6-6 to 6-7. He loses the game. And Mason Miller with the save, as he and the Athletics tally just 4 runs, 8 hits, no errors committed in that game. For the Blue Jays, 3 runs, 6 hits, 3 errors committed. Boy, what a bad game for the Blue Jays on Saturday. And it was another Night Owl baseball game. We'll dive into the top performers and the player of the game momentarily, but let's take you up to speed on how this all happened. It starts out pretty easy. Leo Jimenez gives the Blue Jays an early 1-0 lead on a fly ball to center field, 1-0 Blue Jays. Bo Bichette then scores his 24th double of the season, which would score Ernie Clement its 2-0 Blue Jays over the Athletics. That came in the top of the 3rd inning. Bottom 3rd, we go, and the Athletics, with Lawrence Butler, singles on a ground ball to right fielder George Springer. Denzel Clark, the man on base at the time, scores. It's now Athletics on the board, but they're still down 2-1. Blue Jays with a 1-run lead. In the inning of the bottom of the 3rd for the Athletics, Brent Rooker is next to take the score sheet with his 22nd line drive double of the season. Lawrence Butler scores. Nick Curtis, who I'm guessing was on second base at the time, is moved to 3rd base. That ends the bottom of the 3rd inning. We smudge over to the 5th inning, and more specifically, the bottom half, where we're tied at 2 runs Athletics, 2 runs Blue Jays, and in the bottom of the 5th, it is a 2-run shot from Brent Rooker, his first of the ball game, 20 of the season, as he did not get a home run early in the ball game. The first home run came to, of course, Leo Jimenez, and the Athletics have jumped out to a 2-run lead. It's 4-2 Athletics over the Blue Jays. 4-2 the score. Into the top of the 8th we go, the last of the scoring to be pulled, as Alejandro Kirk has Bo Bichette on second base. He goes to 3rd base. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was on 3rd base. He scores, and Alejandro Kirk hits a sacrifice fly to the center fielder Denzel Clark. He's out, and the Blue Jays would cut it to a 1-run lead, just like the Athletics did in Friday's game, but the final score would be on Saturday's game 4-3, in which the 39 and the 7 Athletics would improve to 40 and 57 going into this afternoon's ball game, the series finale, with the games in series in Sacramento tied at 1. 1 victory Blue Jays, 1 victory Athletics. So the season series is on the line. But the Blue Jays record, from the record they were entering to this game of game 2 at 55-39, where they had 55 wins and 39 losses, would turn to 55-40 with the loss to the Athletics on Saturday night's Night Owl game, as we say in the East Coast when it's late baseball. Now, of course, this also led into Sunday, which means we will get into Sunday's game coming up when we return on Blue Jays Game Recap. Time for a break and a word from our friends over at Sports for Beginners' studio. We'll be hearing from some other people as well. But when we return, not only will we discuss the pitching line between John Schneider and Mark's pitching matchup they played on Sunday, I should say Saturday night, but we'll also dive in to the lineup card for Saturday and get you set for game 3. Dive right into that game, and then before you know it, we'll have our standings update, and then it'll be time to prepare for the All-Star game. That's all coming up when Blue Jays Game Recap continues. Stay with us.
Looking for a sports podcast that covers sports weekly as well as gets you set up for the day? Check out Weekly in Sports with me, Scott McGregor. We give some shout outs of the week to podcasts like this one and those who do them. Discuss the Blue Jays, Bills, Raptors, and more. To learn more, check out the Sports for Beginners Facebook page. Search Sports for Beginners.
Looking for conversations on the world of broadcasting, sports media, and from time to time, my favorite sports teams? Listen to Broadcast Map with me, Ali Musa. To learn more about the show and to view the upcoming schedule, like the Broadcast Map Facebook page. Search Broadcast Map.
Take another look with Gerda Felix and Melanie Taddeo Malo, two powerful women of diverse backgrounds having genuine, unique, and uncomfortable conversations that everyone needs to have. Join Melanie and Gerda for conversations about what is missing from human connections.
All right, welcome back to Blue Jays Baseball. The Athletics on one side of me, the Toronto Blue Jays on the other side of me. Blue Jays fans, Athletic fans. The Athletics take 2 out of 3 against the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays take 1 out of 3. But that's okay, everybody. Time for the All-Star break. And we're going to get you ready for All-Star Weekend action between the Home Run Derby and the All-Star Game in just a matter of moments from now, with the standings update as well coming around. But getting back to Saturday's action, just to put a little bow on it, we didn't mention the top performers yet, so we're going to get to that. But before we do, here's a look at how the teams fared in team comparison through Saturday's matchup on Saturday Night Baseball in Sacramento, as the Blue Jays 3 runs, 6 hits, 1 homer, 14 total bases. They did not steal a base, but they did leave 8 men on, and of course, they scored 3 errors. The difference in the Athletics case is they also got a home run, their second home run of this series in 3 games, while touching base 12 times, 1 home run on 8 hits, 4 runs. They stole 2 bases this time around, but just like them, the Blue Jays, the Athletics also left 8 men on base. If you're wondering what OLB stands for, or LOB to better term it, that means men left on base. And your top performers of the game as we get into it. Brent Rooker's the player of the game, and why not? He was a perfect 2 for 2. Bo Bichette is in the top performers as well, 2 for 4 with 2 doubles and an RBI. 1 for 2 is Lawrence Butler. He also finds his way on there with an RBI, a stolen base, a run driven in, and 2 walks. You'd have to think that Lawrence Butler had at least one of those hits driving that run. But to be walked and get rewarded, that seems like a great exchange. I wonder if the same could be said for game number 3 of this series. But before we get to game number 3 of this series, which tipped off at 4:05 p.m. Eastern Time, 1:05 p.m. Pacific, the Blue Jays and the Athletics lineup in terms of infield and outfield look like this. At third base, first base, shortstop, catcher, and of course, second base, we had Leo Jimenez at second base. Ernie Clement was at third base. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at first base. Bo Bichette was in shortstop. Alejandro Kirk was your designated hitter. So catching, Jacob Lopez's pitcher, Kevin Gausman, that he faced was Tyler Heidemann. He would later be pinch hit for by Joey Luperfido. Miles Straw would be in center field, later taken over by Nathan Lukes, who would come into pinch hit for him. Addison Barger would go into right field after Davis Schneider played left field, which would send Springer to left, who is currently at the beginning of the game in right field. Lawrence Butler was in right field for this game as well, alongside his trusty left fielders and center fielders, Denzel Clark and Tyler S. In the infield, we had Max Muncy at second base. We had Nick Kurtz, Jay Wilson, I should say. Jay Wilson was our shortstop. And at third base, we had Michael Andreur, I believe is the name. No, it's Miguel. It's Miguel A, who led the third base. Our catcher for Jacob Lopez was Shea Langeriers, or Shea L. I hope I'm saying that right. If I'm not saying that right, I'll go with Shea L, which of course means I'm going with SL for the short form. But he would be in the catcher's mitt for Jacob Lopez, and they would only switch a third base for another third baseman with a pinch runner. And who's the pinch runner? Let's see. I think I saw him going. Oh, it was Max Schwaman. Max Schwaman was the pinch runner for Miguel. I hope I said the last name right. If I didn't, I'll just go with Max S. I'll just go with Max S to finish it off there. All right. We got to get to game 3. But before we do, let's go over the pitching matchup, pitching line. Both pitchers had an exceptional game. One fanned 5 and one fanned only 2, giving up a home run. His ERA 4.19. That is Kevin Gausman. With 5 hits, allowed 4 runs, 3 of them only earned, and 2 walk batters. Jacob Lopez may have won the game, but he didn't have it easy either. He gave up 4 hits, 2 runs, each earned, gave up a home run. His ERA 4.20, and he walked 2 batters. ERA, of course, stands for earned run average, and that is at 4.20. So 4.20 was the ERA for Jacob Lopez. Mason Miller, he fanned 2 Blue Jays by striking them out and walked 1 Blue Jay. His ERA, going just 1 inning, is 4.15, and he picks up his 18th save in Sacramento on Saturday night. All right, I would get into the attendance records and whatnot, but we've got to get through another game. So you know what? If there is indeed time, I will dive in to the attendance records for both game 2 and game 3, but we got to talk about game 3 right now, and we are going to do so. And remember, this game started at 4:05 p.m. Eastern, as I told you earlier, and finished in the early evening at 6 o'clock. It started at 4:05 Eastern, 1:05 p.m. Pacific. So what happened in this game? The matchup for us today in game number 3, we saw John Schneider's team get faced with Jeffrey Springs, left-handed pitcher. So who had the season series? Well, we already mentioned it was 2 out of 3 for the Athletics. So let's just dive in and get you all caught up to speed. Here's the line score for game number 3 before we take a break, because I will part this up into our midway mark as we get ready for the All-Star weekend programs that's still to come. But I'm going to give you game 3's line score just before we take another break. For the Blue Jays, 3 errors, 4 hits, 3 runs. So they committed 3 errors yet again, just like they did Saturday night, early Sunday morning. For the Athletics, they committed no errors in this game on 6 runs and 9 hits. Now, they did win this game by only 3 runs, which would indicate that the Blue Jays record heading into the All-Star break and headed back to Toronto is now at 55 wins and 41 losses. This would also indicate that the Athletics have now won 41 games and 57 losses. So 40-57 was the record going into this game against the Blue Jays. 55-40 was the score record for the Blue Jays headed in to Sunday's game with a chance to win the series. And unfortunately, they did not win the series. When we come back, we'll dive into the winning pitcher, the top performers. I'll give you my thoughts on this series. And then we got to close it out with the All-Star break, but not before we get to our standings update. The remaining point of Game 3's breakdown coming up next. Stay with us.
Looking for a good hockey podcast that covers your favorite hockey teams and mine? Check out On the Ice and Behind the Benches, where we chat about our favorite hockey teams from puck drop to the last play of the action. To learn more, follow the On the Ice and Behind the Benches Facebook page. Search On the Ice and Behind the Benches.
CNT Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down. Nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on CNT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on CNT Radio.
Take another look with Gerda Felix and Melanie Taddeo Malo, two powerful women of diverse backgrounds having genuine, unique, and uncomfortable conversations that everyone needs to have. Join Melanie and Gerda for conversations about what is missing from human connections.
Woo-wee! Athletic fans, Blue Jays fans, welcome back to the Blue Jays game recap. It is time to finish off the Blue Jays and the Athletics series once and for all. Once again, if you missed me breaking down half of Game 3 and all of Game 2 in the game breakdown point, as we are now just minutes away from getting ready to close out the show, the Blue Jays end up losing 2 out of 3 to the Athletics with the final score of Game 3 earlier this afternoon, tonight, or this morning, whenever you are listening to it, on the eve of the All-Star Game's first program before the actual All-Star Game, which is the Home Run Derby presented by T-Mobile. We will talk about that momentarily within the next couple of minutes from now. But before we get there, we have to talk about the winners and the loser from game number 3. But just to recap, the Blue Jays lose to the Athletics 6-3 in game 3 of this series, and they lost 4-3 on Saturday night, taking game 1 7-6. The standings update coming up in just seconds from now. But before we get there, we mentioned Mason Miller already. He not only picked up his 18th save in this series, but he also picked up his 18th save as he saves the game for Jeffrey Springs, who gets the win. His record was 7-6. Now it is 8-6 with the victory. Jose Berrios, the losing pitcher for the Blue Jays, as they lose this game, his record 5-4. Was originally 5-3, and he was hoping to keep it that way. If he picked up a win, it would have been his 6th victory of the season, and he would have only had 3 losses, so he would have been 6-3. He is 5-4 with the loss, but the Blue Jays fans and Athletic fans, you don't have to worry about each other until maybe, not saying it will happen, but somewhere down the road. Maybe there's a postseason for both teams. There may be a postseason for the Blue Jays. There may not be a postseason for the Athletics, but you never know. Life's funny sometimes for the Blue Jays and the Athletics. They are, as it stands right now, first in the American League East for the Blue Jays And it is the Athletics currently stand in the standings at dead last with a record of 41-57 in the American League West. Speaking of the American League, it's great that the Athletics took 2 out of 3 Athletic fans. It's great that they're doing it against the Blue Jays. But you know what's even funner? Every team is done, and the first half of the MLB season is over, which means it's time for the All-Star break. One minor thing before we leave Game 3 and get right into finishing off this program once and for all. The player of the game for this game was Nick Kurtz. Jeffrey Springs is a top performer for the Athletics, going 6 2/3 innings. You have Austin picking up a 1-for-3 showcase with a home run, a walk, 2 RBIs, and of course, a run driven in. 5 strikeouts for Jeffrey Springs, 3 runs, 3 hits allowed. And Nick Curtis, the player of the game, is also a top performer of the game. A home run, a double, 2 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. So just in case you're wondering what the batting is for the Athletics, 1-for-3 for Austin W. and Nick Kurtz, 2-for-4 in this game. All right, Blue Jay fans and Athletic fans, we got one more thing to do before we get into our standings update, and that is the final team comparisons of the entire series. And in this one, the Blue Jays left no man on base. The Athletics left 8 men on base, committed 3 errors, the Blue Jays. No errors committed by the Athletics. The Blue Jays touched base 10 times. The Athletics stole 2 bases and touched base 19 times with 3 homers to the 2 homers for the Blue Jays. They also out-hit the Blue Jays 9-4. And of course, our scoreboard in the runs, because that's what really matters. 6-3 runs Athletics over the Blue Jays. Now, due to time constraints, there's a lot to talk about on where Blue Jays game recap heads on Sports for Beginners, where it's going to be with on the ice and behind the benches throughout the remainder of the season, of this 162 games season. Before we get to that, we do have the standings update to get to. We're going to get to that. But before we do that, John Schneider was ejected from the ball game today from the Blue Jays after getting a challenged play heated with the third base umpire. I will not say a lot about the play because I still have to look at it myself, just like some of us might not have seen it and probably didn't want to see it. But he was ejected from the game after challenging a play from Davis Schneider, who homered in this game after being foul balled the first homer chance he had on the first pitch he had, as the third base umpire looked up at the foul pole in the left field area and declared it foul ball. The umpires would go into a review, but after reviewing the play, as we all heard, the call remained as called foul ball. It was not a home run until it was. Also, the MLB draft is underway today as well. And some of these drafts that the teams so far have played out from high school drafts for the MLB 2025 draft seem to be good additions to the team. We'll talk about that on the ice and behind the benches, and I'm sure we'll talk about them on Sports for Beginners. But we still have a lot to cover here on Blue Jays game recap. So here we go. Here is your standings update, and I'm going to share the screen here so you guys can see what that is. We have in the American League West, the Los Angeles Angels now in second last place at 47-49, just 4 games back of a wild card spot, 9 games back of a division, and you have 8.5 games back of a division leader, Houston Astros, over the Seattle Mariners, with the Texas Rangers now at 48 wins and 49 losses. They are only 3.5 games out of a wild card, so they can have a chance to take over the wild card in 3.5 games. But in order to do that, they'd have to continue winning. Their next series is with the Detroit Tigers when we come back from the All-Star break. And Houston and Seattle are meeting each other after the All-Star break. They currently sit at a record of 51-45, 46-40, with the Mariners just 5 games behind the Houston Astros. In the American League Central, speaking of the Tigers, who are taking on Texas, they lead the division by a large margin, 59 wins, 38 losses. They're currently on a 4-game winning streak. Losing streak, I should say. It's a 4-game losing streak. They'll hope to get off that schneid when they take on the Texas Rangers. Check it out on Detroit Tigers is broadcast and the Texas Rangers broadcast after the All-Star break. Sure to be a good one. Meanwhile, the Minnesota Twins are just 11.5 games back of the division, 4 games back of a wild card division. With their only loss, they are on a 1-game losing streak right now. They'll play Colorado Rockies after the All-Star break. The Cleveland Guardians sit currently at second last place as they take on the Athletics. We'll talk more about the Athletics and the Blue Jays schedule momentarily, but their record currently is 46-49. They're 12 games, like the Kansas City Royals, back of a division, and 4.5 games back of a wild card spot. That could change going into the second half of the season, as both teams are just averages away from 500. So they're games away from 500. The Chicago White Sox are 27 games out of a division win, but that's okay as long as they can keep their wild card hopes alive. Right now, they're 19.5 games back of a wild card and out of the wild card race right now. But if they start to go on a winning streak, right now they're on a losing streak of 2. If they go on a winning streak and it starts with Pittsburgh, look out, Detroit, Minnesota, Kansas City, and Cleveland. Chicago's coming for you. The American League East standings update for you, Blue Jays fans. The Blue Jays currently sit high on the top of the leaderboard, 55-41, batting just 573 in terms of 500. But the Yankees are now 2 games behind the Blue Jays and 2 games in a wild card spot. Remember how I said that the Blue Jays coming into the series with the Athletics could have been on a 12-game winning streak that could have been ended on Saturday night? Well, I was saying that for a reason, because now that the New York Yankees, while they're on a losing streak of 2 games as well as the Blue Jays, they're only 2 games behind the division leader Blue Jays. And last check, when we talked about the White Sox and we talked about that series, it wasn't until after we finished the Angels series that we looked back a Sunday ago and said, this was how many games the Yankees were up on the Blue Jays before the Blue Jays took over the American League East. But they've got trouble brewing as well because the Boston Red Sox are also 3 games behind the Blue Jays and 1 game into the wild card with their record 53-45. The Yankees' record is 53-43. So that's where they currently sit. Tampa Bay is 515. They are just 5.5 games back of the division and 1.5 games out of the wild card. So they are not out of it, ladies and gentlemen. And speaking of not out of it, the division may be far-fetched for the Baltimore Orioles, but I told you, baseball fans, that teams have a way of finding their way into the postseason. Baltimore is one of those teams. Right now, with 43 wins and 52 losses, you're thinking they're on a 2-game losing streak, but they're only 7.5 games back of a wild card spot. So they get on a tear, they will become a problem. So keep your eyes and ears open for more of the Baltimore Oriole ball games because this team could become a problem soon. And speaking of becoming problems, you look at the National League East, the team leader is the Philadelphia Phillies. In the Central, we got the Chicago Cubs, but not by much. Milwaukee is just a game back of the Chicago Cubs. And while it's pretty much far-fetched in that division, who's going to find a way to get into the wild card if you're the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Washington Nationals in the National League East? It ain't too far-fetched for the Arizona Diamondbacks to take over the LA Dodgers, Padres, and Giants, as they are just 5.5 games out of a wild card spot, 11 games back of the division. And if you're speaking division-wise for the San Francisco Giants, with 52-45, a lot of wins by them, and they could be taking the division. They are just 6 games back of the division and only 5 games out of a wild card spot. They could take a wild card spot if they get on a win streak coming out of the All-Star break. Will that happen against Toronto? Maybe not. We'll see what happens. These standings updates were just updated 10 minutes ago. 10:29 to be exact was the time that the standings got updated. And that's where they currently sit. And speaking of the standings update, let's have a look at the games that went on today. First off, the Yankees lose to the Chicago Cubs 4-1. Miami Marlins take down the Orioles 11-1. The Red Sox beat the Rays 4-1. The Reds take care of business against the Rockies 4-2. Tigers fight hard, but the Mariners come on top. It is 8-4 the final score in favor of the Mariners, as both teams committed an error in the ball game, one error each to a side. The Guardians need 10 innings to decide a 6-5 victory over the White Sox. Close game to be precise with the New York Mets over the Kansas City Royals. The Royals take care of business there, and they do clinch a victory. The Texas Rangers hand a loss to the 56 and now 40 Houston Astros 5-1. The Pirates take it 2-1 over the Minnesota Twins. The Atlanta Braves find a way, but the Cardinals answer. It's 5-4 Cardinals over the Braves. The Angels lose to the D-backs 5-1. The Padres on the other side of Pennsylvania lose to the San Diego Padres. Beat the Padres 2-1. Of course, our game 6-3. The Brewers 8-1 victors over the Nationals, and the Dodgers need 11 innings. So they're not the only team that went into extra innings. They need 11 innings, and it is the Dodgers coming out on top 5-2 in that game. All right, everybody, that was your schedule. And now for the fun part. When we return in 30 seconds, it's time to finish off Blue Jays game recap on Sports for Beginners and on the ice and behind the benches. The All-Star break, after the All-Star break, schedule for both the Blue Jays and the Athletics coming right up. But first, up next in 30 seconds, it's the All-Star programming you've all been waiting for. The Home Run Derby and the All-Star game itself, when Blue Jays game recap continues in 30 seconds. Stay with us.
Looking for a good hockey podcast that covers your favorite hockey teams and mine? Check out On the Ice and Behind the Benches, where we chat about our favorite hockey teams from puck drop to the last play of the action. To learn more, follow the On the Ice and Behind the Benches Facebook page. Search On the Ice and Behind the Benches.
Welcome back, Blue Jays fans, Athletic fans. That is the end of the first half in the 162 Blue Jays game seasons and the Athletics seasons as well. All right, when we returned from break, I said we would dive in to the Athletics, and I'm keeping my promise because we're talking to the Athletics and we're talking to the Blue Jay fans. about where their next series are in the All-Star break conclusion, which will be the All-Star game between American League All-Stars and the National League All-Stars. The All-Star weekend is already underway. During Game 1's recap, I mentioned that the National League and American League futures were underway, and they have since gone final. We'll dive into that and the rest of the American League All-Star Weekend, National League All-Star Weekend finale in just minutes from now. But first, the Blue Jays and the Athletics have completed their season series, with the Athletics taking 2 out of 3 against the Blue Jays in July. Now it's time for the Blue Jays to prepare to head home for quite the amazement. We'll start with the Blue Jays here as it begins with a 6-game homestand starting with 9:30 in the morning baseball for all those Junior J fans out there that want an outdoor program. It starts at 9:30 in the morning for the outdoor program. And then the game itself is at 12:05 p.m. Eastern Time. But before that, join us for a City Connect night, City Connect Friday night for a 7:07 start. Pitching matchups, I'm sure, will be revealed as we inch closer to the end of the All-Star weekend. We won't bring them up on this show. But after that, it's a regular day, a 3:07 first pitch start, and game 2 of the series between the San Francisco Giants. And then again, as I mentioned, 12:05 start, Junior Jays. It is the San Francisco Giants. Of course, after the game, every Junior J is able to run the bases post-game. And now for the fun series everybody's looking forward to. And I mean everybody is looking forward to. And that is, of course, the Yankees and the Blue Jays. That's a 3-game series set to start Monday against Jeff Hoffman. Bobblehead Day. First 15,000 fans at the ballpark receive a Thanos-inspired bobblehead that is Jeff Hoffman related. I believe that's the first 15,000 fans at the ballpark. I could be wrong. So get your tickets while they still last. The series continues Tuesday with Looney Dogs Night at 7:07 p.m. Eastern Time. Of course, that's the same for all 3 of these games. And then if you're one of the first 15,000 fans at the ballpark on Wednesday, before the Blue Jays head on a road trip to play 4 against the Tigers, and then I think 4 against the Orioles, including the doubleheader, it is Salsa Night. If you're one of the first 15,000 fans of the ballpark, you'll receive a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Salsa Night bobblehead that looks exactly like something you've probably never seen before. But that's another giveaway on Salsa Night. So we'll keep you posted there. I'm just going to bring it up real quick. The Salsa Night is the bobblehead that people will be looking forward to. That's not it. It's okay. We'll find out more. I'm sure you'll find out more in the tickets. But that is your schedule for the Blue Jays coming out of the All-Star break. They'll have 4 games in Comerica Park. And then, of course, we got that doubleheader game on Tuesday with the PPD game from the 4th month of 2025, which was the 11th day. That'll be the makeup game. And you've got it all starting at 6:35 p.m. Eastern Time Monday night. And then 12:35, same time as the makeup game on Wednesday, the 30th of July. And the Blue Jays return home for a series against, I believe it is the Royals. Yes, it's the Royals. It'll be a quick homestand with a specialty ticket night on Saturday, a slow pitch specialty ticket. So get your specialty tickets there if you're ready for that. And it'll be the first time in probably years that the Blue Jays host a promotional fireworks night post-game against the Royals. 7:07 is the first pitch for that game on Friday night. That kicks things up into high gear following the conclusion of July. And then they're back on the road to face the Rockies and the Dodgers before coming home to play the Texas Rangers and the Chicago Cubs. All right. let's get into the athletic schedule. And because it's due to time constraints, we are going to give up just 2 half of that long road trip. And why did I say 2? Well, we don't really have a lot of time to get into all of that road trip. So we're only going to reveal to you the games leading up to that 4-game series against the Astros. And it's 3 games with the Guardians starting at 4:10 Pacific on both Friday and Saturday. Those are the times of that matchup. I imagine it's a little late in the Eastern time, but it'll be a 4:10 start for the Guardians matchup on the Pacific Coast with the Guardians and the Athletics in Cleveland. They'll wrap it up at 10:40 a.m. Pacific on Sunday, July the 20th, before heading to Arlington, Texas to take on the Texas Rangers against the Texas Rangers in Arlington, Texas. All 3 of those games are 5:05 starts. And then the Astros welcome a 4-game series set against the Athletics of Sacramento. But I'm not going to give you the times for those games. I'll let you guys look at that. I will tell you that the series starts on Thursday and continues to Sunday. Then they're home against the Mariners for 3 to finish off July. And then the D-backs come to town for a 7:05 p.m. start time on the Pacific. And then, of course, that also takes into Saturday, and it will wrap up at 1:05 p.m. Pacific, 4:05 p.m. Eastern Time on August 3rd, Sunday. Well, my friends, that is it for Blue Jays game recap on Sports for Beginners, and that, of course, means we are at the finish line of On the Ice and Behind the Benches for Blue Jays game recap as of right now. The All-Star game, as mentioned, is at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time, 6 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time, 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Time. And that goes for tomorrow night's action as well, the Home Run Derby, before the American League and National League All-Stars take the field for the 95th annual All-Star game. 95th annual All-Star game. Wow, that's like a lot of years in the Midsummer Classic. The T-Mobile Home Run Derby begins again at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time, 6 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time, 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Time. And then, of course, the game itself. 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time, 6 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time, 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific is the time of that game. And that'll pretty much do it here for us on Blue Jays game recap. So, Blue Jays fans, athletic fans, enjoy your All-Star weekend. Baseball fans in general, enjoy your All-Star weekend as well. Blue Jays fans, just before we go and sign off here, Sports for Beginners has issued a following announcement for Blue Jays baseball on Sports for Beginners. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I will say that it inquires they will have more time to do a different show. Hopefully it's not something big or something wrong. We will have it for you. Don't worry. You won't miss a thing. We will have it for you. And it will be on the ice and behind the benches as a rewind as well. They'll be recapping a week's worth of baseball, not just including the homestand, but it'll be a Blue Jays weekly recap of the week that was in Blue Jays land, and it'll be a recap of the games leading off to the next day off, and that won't be until, as far as the schedule is concerned, that won't be until, I believe, after one of the following matchups between the Rockies and the Blue Jays. So they don't have a day off for the rest of July. It's Yankees, Giants, Tigers, Orioles, and then, of course, back at it against the Royals, and then Rockies. They do have a day off on the 3rd, so they're not playing baseball on July the 3rd. But we'll see when your weekly recaps come to you. As for us, join us during the road trips on the ice and behind the benches. We'll be covering as many games as we possibly can within the Tiger series, and we'll probably be covering as many games as we possibly can with the Orioles series. So you'll still get Blue Jays game recap for on the ice and behind the benches. But as of right now, that is it for this double dose of Blue Jays game recap, and that is it for Sports for Beginners is Blue Jays game recap for this season until further notice. I have been Thomas McGregor. Lights up. Let's go Blue Jays. And Blue Jays fans, I look forward to seeing you after the homestand when the Blue Jays open up 4 games against the Detroit Tigers on Thursday. See you then. Enjoy the homestand. Enjoy the All-Star break, baseball fans and Blue Jays fans. As I said before, lights up. Let's go. See you then.
Thank you so much for joining us on Sports for Beginners, the podcast, for Blue Jays game recap, the after show on Sports for Beginners, the podcast, right after every Blue Jays game. To learn more about upcoming episodes, when they drop, and schedule, please visit https://sportsforbeginners0.wordpress.com. Follow the show on Facebook at facebook.com/sportsforbeginners87. Send us an email at sportsforbeginners87@gmail.com. Follow Ali, Thomas, and Scott on Twitter at Scott McGregor3, Thomas J, and ALI Musa. Follow Thomas and Scott on Instagram at SMC_87_ and TM_80 and TM00_. Thanks for listening to Blue Jays Baseball, and we hope to see you soon again. This has been Blue Jays Game Recap. Once again, the website is https://sportsforbeginners0.wordpress.com. Thanks for listening. And when it's time for the Blue Jays to play ball, there's only one chant Blue Jays fans will be using. Catch you later, baseball fans.
Thank you so much for listening to the On the Ice and Behind the Benches post-game show on the Sports for Beginners podcast feed. Remember, everybody on the Ice and Behind the Benches, to join Thomas every Tuesday for weekly episodes of your favorite ice content, from the drop of the puck to hitting the showers. We thank you for joining us. Hey Blue Jays fans, a Blue Jays game recap for Sports for Beginners. It is your host of On the Ice and Behind the Benches, the podcast, Thomas McGregor here. While it may have come to an end on Sports for Beginners, I highly encourage you to stay tuned for further updates on Sports for Beginners as they are taking a new path. But don't be afraid to join me during the next road series as Blue Jays game recap continues on the Ice and Behind the Benches. From all of us at Sports for Beginners who put Blue Jays game recap into play, thank you very much for joining us and listening to the show. If you'd like to see it again, please let our host of Sports for Beginners know, and have yourselves a great All-Star weekend and a great second half. See you then.